Hey guys, happy Sunday. Welcome back to another episode of Krissie Reads. And today, in honor of the fact that this is my first and only week of kind of spring break from school until I have to go back for my next quarter, I'm going to read to you guys a part of a story I wrote for my fantasy literature class called Fehler. And I'm going to start from chapter 1, from the very beginning of this random thing. It's actually 26 pages long, single-spaced, and we had to write it over the course of about 8 weeks is how long we had to work on it, because we didn't start working on it until about the second or third week, and we have an 11-week quarter. But here we go. Fehler, chapter 1. "How are you, mine Fehler?" he asked as he came into the room. He placed the box he was holding on her white desk. Fehler smiled, sitting up in her bed, white sheets pooling in her lap. She shook Cavalier's head and it rattled. "I'll take that as good." He opened the gray box, placing the tin lid on the desk. It was the only object in the room, other than Cavalier, that wasn't white. He pulled out a syringe and flicked the needle twice. His brown eyes looked at her, looking colder than they normally did. "Give me your arm," he ordered as he sat on the edge of the bed. Fehler dutifully held out her arm to her father. She didn't like needles, but she knew somewhere in the gray metal tin was a lollipop. They were sweet and delicious. She just hoped it wasn't a blue one. She didn't like those. Sirens blasted throughout the place. Fehler squeaked as she curled up in her blanket. She looked up at her father. His peppered hair covered his eyes as he turned to the door. He pushed it out of his face as he cursed. He tossed the syringe into the tin as he entered a code into the number pad on the corner of the desk. Metal doors closed off the entryway into the room. Fehler grabbed Cavalier and rolled up into a cocoon of blankets. She peeked her eyes out of her cocoon when her father hoisted her up. He walked to her closet and held his eyes to the white doorknob. The knob let out a green light that scanned his eyes. It gave a soft click. He shifted Fehler's weight so he could open the door. Instead of her usual closet, a long hall was there. He put her down on the ground and closed the door behind them. He hoisted her back up before sprinting down the hall. Fehler could hear popping sounds over her father's footsteps. They turned a corner in the long hall. He came to another door. He made her stand as he opened the door. The popping sounds were louder, and Fehler grabbed his other arm through the cocoon. "Shush!" He held a slender finger over his mouth. He looked out through the crack. Not seeing anyone in sight, he opened the door further. He took a tentative step outward and led the child out. He did a hurried walk to the desk and opened the drawer. He shifted his hand through its contents. He ground his teeth when he didn't find what he was looking for. He opened another drawer after another. Fehler grew tired of standing and sat down on the floor. She wasn't allowed out of her room often, so she took the time to look around the large room. There were several desks around the room. Some had computers, others had filing cabinets to the side. It seemed nice. The doors on the other end of the room opened with a loud thud. There were large black and gray creatures. They looked fluffy like marshmallow men to her, only they carried large guns. Her father pushed her out of sight. "Raise your hands above your head," a booming voice ordered. Fehler heard her father curse as his hand roughly pushed her under the desk. "Es tut mir leid." It was the softest she had ever heard his voice, and she knew it was directed at her. She heard him run away from the desk. The room filled with loud popping sounds. Fehler shrieked. She crawled all the way to the back of the little cubby she was hiding in. The flashes of light she kept seeing were scaring her, so she closed them. As quick as the storm had happened, silence had filled its place even quicker. Fehler slowly peeked her eyes open. She lifted her head to squat on her feet. She saw red splats on the walls and felt uncomfortable. She saw Cavalier lying just outside of her hiding spot. She eased herself closer to the edge. She froze when with her hand over her toy. She heard heavy footsteps heading towards her. The Marshmallow Men, she thought as she quickly picked Cavalier up and retreated back into the hiding place. She couldn't get caught by them. She didn't like them. Plus, they were scary. She hugged Cavalier to her chest as she held her breath. "Come out of there with your hands up," another voice ordered. Fehler repositioned herself to flee. Then she realized Cavalier purred every time she moved. "Shh," she ordered the toy. The footsteps grew closer. Fehler looked around for an exit. The door they had come in was closed, and she couldn't get it back open without her father. Fehler saw a large black boot and held her breath. Maybe if she didn't move, he couldn't see her. He crouched down and Fehler shrieked. His large circular eyes were soulless. He was the scariest alien she had ever met, and she didn't like him. He just stared at her, gun in hand, a big marshmallowy statue. And I will leave it there. That is the story I wrote for fantasy literature. It's not posted anywhere, obviously. I might post that little excerpt on a site for you guys to read if you want. It mainly follows the character Fehler, and she's adorable. I had so much fun writing for her, and it's actually one of the few long stories I've actually completed. And looking over it now, I'm just like, there are errors that I'm just gonna read over it all later and fix, because some of the sentences I'm realizing are now very choppy, and it probably gets worse towards the end because that's when everything was rushed. So, I'll see you guys next episode. Bye-bye.